Hey folks, this week Randall joins me and we check in on a few things across the open source landscape, Flutter and Dart and why its death has been greatly exaggerated, what's up with Google and Gemini and programming and AI, lots of other stuff, why AI makes sense as a junior developer, and an interesting question, how do we get senior developers if AI is taking all the junior developer jobs? Super interesting, you don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. This is Floss Weekly episode 845, recorded Tuesday, September the 2nd, the Sticky Spaghetti Gauge. It's time for Floss Weekly. That's a show about free, Libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and today, well, we had a guest scheduled, and it turned out there was a scheduling issue. We'll make sure and try to get him back sometime in the next few weeks. But we had Randall scheduled to co-host, and Randall said, there's stuff going on in the news, there's Google stuff to talk about, let's just have a show. And so it's me and Randall today, and we are going to geek out over some open source news, some Google news. There may be some vibe coding involved, we make no promises. But welcome Randall, appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
It's good to be back on Floss Weekly occasionally. It's
it
kind of
is.
fun.
It's. I say this from time to time, but one of the very fun things that we've done is we bring you back from time to time. We bring Doc back from time to time. We've gotten Aaron in the rotation as well. Some of the old faces, we bring him back on as co-hosts.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. So
that was a great 13-year run, but I'm glad it's over. I'm glad you've taken the reins.
I understand
and taken care of this. So yeah.
It's a lot.
You
to keep
definitely
up with.
know first.
Yes.
You know firsthand how much work it is to make a podcast.
Yes. So I see you've got your Gemini shirt on. You're kind of a Googler these days. Not employed by, but no. Let's keep this straight.
Yeah, no, I'm a Google developer expert, and that's a non-paid, unpaid DevRel, I think is probably the way I quickly say it. So in other words, I'm working closer to clients than Google works directly. So it's sort of like I'm out there in the field, right, explaining what I know. And in particular, my area of expertise that has been certified by Google about me is Dart and Flutter. Mm-hmm. And there's only 14 of us in North America. So it's a fairly small, cozy group, about 100 worldwide that are Dart and Flutter experts. And but we're only one category. There's like 20 categories of products. Like there's cloud, there's machine learning, there's workspace, all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So that Firebase, so that those aren't my specialties, although I'm sort of adjacent to those groups all the time. So I get a lot of crossbreeding. I get to read a lot of the stuff that's going out to GDEs in general, and that gives me sort of early access to technology. A lot of the times, it also gives me like cloud credits. I was about to say crowd credits, and that didn't make any sense. Free cloud credits, so I can experiment all the craziness that I want to do, or lead classes in this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of perks like that, and they've flown me now. Google has flown me to 2 different conferences, so this is nice because I didn't have to pay the travel and the flight and stuff like that. I still had to pay for all the incidentals and stuff, but it's still a great way to get in front of people, and Google from time to time will pay for me to go someplace, so that's really kind of cool.
Nice.
So that's kind of the general of that. I joined the GDE program in about 7 years ago when I first started playing with Flutter. Mm-hmm. I got good enough in Flutter that my Google employee friend at the time actually promoted me for being part of the GDE program, and I got in after my series of 3 interviews, and which was all pretty good. And it's just been great because I've had like I said, cool insider access to especially all the stuff you're seeing right now in Gemini. I've typically got lots of early access stuff that I get to play with.
Nice.
Long before it gets out to the public. So every once in a while I forget is this something that's just available to me, or is this something that I can tell people about? Is it something online? Am I getting
Right.
it free specially, or is it free for
Is it free for
everybody?
everybody? Yes.
There's all these weird things. It's hard having this sort of double life of here's what I can officially say, and here's what I know, and there's a
Hmm.
gap there, and it's I would make a horrible spy. I'll just tell you that. I don't keep track of that kind of artificial divisions very well.
So Google has been kind of in the news recently, and for multiple
A
things.
lot.
One of the big
A,
ones, though, really actually kind of concerns me. I am not thrilled about the end of side loading on Android. Have you watched that particular bit of news?
it's the end of unauthenticated sideloading, though.
Right.
So if somebody still goes through and sets up a developer account, they'll still
Hmm.
be able to ship an APK to their friends because it now will be signed with an authenticated,
Hmm.
developer, and that's all it's getting rid of is just the ability to just publish a random APK and letting it be loaded onto your machine.
Yeah. So there's two things really come to mind with this. One, to be able to get that, you've got to like take a picture of your ID and actually send it to Google, and
Hmm.
I think pay them a little bit of money too. Which I know some people are not fans of. The other one that I'm really wondering about is what it's going to mean for places like F-Droid.
Don't know. And I don't know much about Android, so you're not talking to the right person. I never started with Android and iOS at all. I went directly into Flutter. And I've been told by some of my friends, you missed all the important pain there. I went, well, no, I'm happy. I'm happy that I skipped right ahead and went right to the real framework instead of having to, learn thousands and thousands of lines of examples in Android and then learn a similar thousands and thousands of lines of code of iOS and Swift and stuff. So I took a shortcut. So I don't know a lot about a lot of these pains that you guys talk about. So it's always kind of funny hearing about that. And I do have to, unfortunately, lean on my iOS and Android friends when I'm dealing with a client and there's something odd going on. But also at this point, I'm also just likely to ask Gemini, "Hey, what's the scoop on this?" And it will tell me at least something. It'll at least hallucinate something. So
Yeah, I,
yeah.
I'm I find the timing of this from Google to be really weird because it's
Uh-huh.
not been very many months that the European Union came out against Apple and said, "Hey, you guys need to start supporting secondary stores that are not
Right.
behind this kind of restriction." And then a couple of months later, the folks at Google come out and say, "Hey, we're going to make this new restriction that you can't have secondary stores." It's like this may not be the best plan. So I kind of suspect that it's not going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen everywhere. But I don't know.
And I still don't think it's ruling out secondary stores. What it's ruling out is unsigned binaries.
Right.
And so it's a safety issue, really. It just means there is somebody responsible for the bits in your machine.
Yeah, I suppose that's
And
true.
so that puts it more in parity with the way that Apple does it and has been forced to introduce the possibility of third-party stores. Those third-party stores, even for Apple, still have to get binaries that are signed by developer accounts before they can publish those. So,
What I don't know is how that works. So I know I've worked with F-Droid before on getting packages supported, and they've got an offline build system that does verifiable builds, and all of that stuff. And I don't know how that's going to work with trying to do package signing.
I don't know. Not my area. Haven't researched it. Ask me a Dart or Flutter question or a AI assisted coding question. I can give you all sorts of answers, but that's a question I can't answer.
Okay, I will. Remember, Randall, you asked for it. You asked me to ask you a Dart and Flutter question. We can go there.
We could.
An iOS buddy of mine, an iOS developer who is a friend of mine,
Okay.
just the other day we were talking about this and said, "Oh, hey, there's this new Flutter project.
Glass.
Look."
Liquid glass.
Well, liquid
No,
glass
sorry.
is a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, look,
I
there's
thought you were
this
going there.
there's this new Dart Flutter project that looks pretty cool. What do you think of it? And his response to me was, "Oh, Flutter's dead. Google killed it."
There are multiple misinterpretations of multiple announcements over time that can lead someone to believe that Flutter is dead.
Hmm.
And the problem is that putting a headline like Flutter is dead is great clickbait for Medium articles.
Oh, yes.
And so there's a tendency to want to just say that in your headline
Hmm.
and then totally backpedal in the body of the text. And that is weird because then, of course, the headline was seen by somebody else's RSS reader or whatever,
Yes.
and that's all they see is that part of it. The probably the most complex one was because I think it was 3 years ago. There was a internal shuffling of how the Flutter team reports to the rest of the company, and then there was some layoffs on the some other important team.
Hmm.
But it got conflated somehow that that was layoffs also on the Flutter team, and that the Flutter team had been gutted. But that was absolutely not true, and you had to read carefully what the press release said, and that was part of the problem. Is the press release was ambiguous. And but I know from insider information that no, there was like one or two people who, uh, because of a requirement for, I believe it was documentation or QA or somebody needing to be in a certain location,
Hmm.
they were consolidating the locations for that sub team. That a couple of people opted to choose to leave the Flutter team. And I don't know whether they left Google entirely or whether they just transferred to a different team, but that was part of the options given to people anyway. So there was that. So there was a slight reduction in force, but it
Hmm.
was tiny. There are hundreds. I can't give you the exact number because they don't tell me either. But I know that I've heard many times there are hundreds of people working on Flutter and Dart full time inside Google. So it's not like it's just a tiny project with 5 people working on it. It's a very serious project, and that's because Google has gone heavily invested in building internal infrastructure using Dart and Flutter, as well as letting it be something that now there's a million apps. No, is it a million apps or a million programmers? A million programmers that are signed up for Dart and Flutter sort of daily downloads or whatever the stuff is going for.
Hmm.
And so it's not going away. It's not going away. Something like 35% of all free apps in the stores are written in Flutter now.
Wow.
And they can only measure the free ones because they don't want to pay for all the apps to dig into their binaries. But all the free ones they're downloading, and they're pretty much it's significant. It's like 30, like I said, 35%. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's somewhere in there.
Hmm.
So yeah, Flutter's not dead. Flutter's not dying. Flutter just keeps getting bigger and better. More new releases, realignment releases, like pulling Material and Cupertino, the two primary design systems for iOS and Android, effectively. They're pulling that out as packages, which means they can have a separate life cycle from the main Flutter releases. And this is partially to support the idea of having Material 3 or the new Material 3. I forgot there's a name for it. There's Material 3 something that is different because it's going to be breaking changes, especially to support things like liquid glass and stuff. So it's going to have to be slightly different. And so they're preparing the way by, in a non-breaking change way, repackaging the Cupertino widgets and the material widgets on top of a sort of core common widget that will be in the core for other design systems, like, say, the Mac OS design or the Ubuntu design or all the other design packages, the Windows design, to make sure that those have a good base to work from as well. So there'll be one consistent base out of the core team, and then Material and Cupertino will come out to their own packages, and that way you can drop in your own design package and know that it's not going to be interfered by new Material releases or new Cupertino releases because they're not part of the main flow there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's that kind of change going on to try to keep things relevant and current. Yeah.
Do you know, is Michael Thompson still the guy at Google? Is he the product manager over Dart and Flutter?
I believe there's been some change ups there. I don't
Okay.
know. They don't. I'm a GDE, but they don't give me the org chart. I think they're still afraid that that we're literally outsiders too. So, but we're insiders because we've signed NDAs. So that's the reason I get to have early access to things I can't tell you about.
Sure.
That are fun to play with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Looks like he is still there, so he is
Okay.
at least still part of the Flutter Dart team.
Yeah.
That was in this conversation I had with my iOS buddy. That was one of the points that he made. Oh, Flutter doesn't have a PM anymore. That's a sign that Google's killing it. And I think part of this comes from part of the reason why that sort of thing is such a sticky idea is that Google is known for killing things. Like they have all of these different projects. Like and that's kind of what you have to do with a big business. You have to throw lots of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And maybe their gauge for how sticky the spaghetti is different than what people would like.
Well, and the fact is that given they've got a fairly hefty supply of cash, they can try a lot of different things,
Right.
and then analyze it. But when you look at the analysis of what the goodwill that Flutter is bringing to Google, and the fact that it's actually an open source project, 40% of the commits are coming from the community already anyway, and they're moving to strip down the core even more and more, so that really it's all going to be about packages and about who's going to own packages and things like that. Yeah, I don't see it going away anytime soon. It just keeps getting better, and Dart keeps getting better too. Cooler and cooler things come along. We get a new release of Flutter, a new major release of Flutter every 3 months or so, and of course that comes with upgrades to Dart as well. I'm trying to think of some of the things that were the recent ones.
I tend to just say Flutter Dart, and it's almost like that's all one thing, but that's not the case. What are these two different things? For people that don't know, what are these two different things?
So Dart is a stupidly simple language to learn. It looks a lot like Java without all the overhead and pains of Java.
Okay, good. I'm glad you threw that in.
It was originally, yeah. But it was originally designed to be a browser replacement for JavaScript, because JavaScript was getting long in the tooth, and this is before TypeScript. So Dart started 12 years ago, before TypeScript. And the theory was that there would be a Dart VM sitting alongside the V8 VM, or whatever the VM happened to be in Chrome or whatever, right? And there you could have either JavaScript code being uploaded or having Dart code being uploaded, and they would both be run essentially natively. That got into trouble, though, because they both want to be event loops. V8 and Dart both want to own the event cycle. And so the coordination back and forth was messy to begin with, and also required a lot of restrictions. And then the other thing that they looked at was, well, how can we get this in anything besides Chrome? We've got to convince Apple to put a Dart VM into Safari.
Good luck.
We've got to convince Microsoft to put a Dart VM in Edge. It wasn't going to fly. And so they instead decided they already had a Dart to JavaScript compiler, so it's a good transpiler.
Okay.
And Dart was designed to be a semantic subset of JavaScript in such a way that you could take any Dart program and always have a way of converting it to JavaScript. And there's good JS interop as well. So that means we can, look at things in the DOM, or look at, run triggers when events happen, things like that. So really tightly integrated. However, it was also loosey-goosey in terms of types when it was initially released, in that you could say this is an int variable, but you could put a double in it, or you could put all sorts of things into it. It was checking at runtime to see if the type was actually correct. There was no compile time type safety. It wasn't until Dart 2 that I think that's right, that compile time safety actually started getting into the language, and that made a lot of things not backward compatible.
I was going to say that sounds like it's going to break a lot of programs.
but it was done long enough ago. I mean, we're still talking 5 or 6 years ago. So it was done long enough ago that most people today will never have experienced the pain of going to non-null by default, which
Yeah.
was the whole package for that. So there was non-null, and there's also strong typing. They were both kind of in the same, same 6 months or so. So pretty good stuff. Now that's Dart. That's a language. You can use it. It runs on Mac, Windows. There's ARM compilers to put it on your Android or your
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi. Yeah, so you can run it everywhere basically. And so you end up with a binary that you can install anywhere. And in fact, you can end up with no library binaries too. So it's
Nice.
kind of like Go in that sense. It's fully self-contained if you build it, and then you can just ship it around and everything. It's that same architecture.
Yeah.
Because there's no libraries to install. The libraries come with the app. So that's one whole ecosystem, and there are many people who have used Dart in production and for serious applications, server side stuff, incredible stuff going on. People running web applications and stuff, all just written in Dart. There's a version of Angular Dart that Google uses that replaced GWT. So that was again, it's Dart code compiling down to JavaScript, working in all browsers because of that, and that's a whole ecosystem. All the Dart stuff is there. However, when the Flutter team, originally called Sky, wanted to have a language to do their things, and they were initially started with using JavaScript. But they were disappointed in that it wasn't really getting them a good developer experience just because of JavaScript. So, so what they did is they went over to the Dart team and said, if Dart had these capabilities, we could use it like we want it, like we can write our own thing for iOS and Android. And we wouldn't be doing things like the way React Native does it, which is it runs JavaScript or TypeScript, runs TypeScript that goes through a bridge to actually enact everything. If we can get Dart to compile to ARM code, then that means that we can build apps, full-on apps that sit natively, just like native apps, rather than going through some sort of bridge. And that should improve the speed of scrolling and a bunch of other stuff if we can do that. So the Dart and the Flutter teams got together. They both moved their projects closer together. I think they were on the same floor at Google Mountain View actually for a while. And so Flutter is an SDK. It's a user interface toolkit, kind of at the level of, I'm trying to think of the equivalent for X11. There's probably quite a few. GTK, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
So that the layer of a library is more of a library like that. But it has the ability to reach down and touch native code through FFI and Ginny, and it can it's got a pretty robust debugging system, previewing system, a pretty good mature ecosystem now. Lots and lots of packages in the pub. So I mean, millions of packages in the pub at this point to do almost everything you want to do. And you can have your own design system. You can control, with Flutter, you can control every pixel on the screen ultimately. So you're not tied into the vendor's idea of the widgets they want to put on there. So I can have an app that looks exactly the same on both iOS and Android and aren't locked into either using Material or the iOS displays. So I think I covered what you asked, right?
Yeah. You mentioned the packages. There's something that's been sort of in the news. It's been in the news a lot for a long time, and that is malicious packages showing up on these various repositories. Is that something that pub.dev has faced yet, or is it still coming?
I don't believe there's any public packages that have had to been pulled. I'm not on that particular mailing list, so I don't know if there's like discussions amongst the pub admins. But the nice thing is the pub is sourced at one place, so it's not like you have to get a lot of people to cooperate if one of these packages needs to be pulled away.
Right.
But I don't think, and of course, there's no there's no real binaries on pub either. I mean, I'm sure there are a few blobs, but most of it is all source code. So what you're getting when you're accessing a package is you're seeing the entire source code already. And I think that keeps people somewhat honest because they can examine the source code. It's part of their app that they're installing. So,
Yeah.
but we haven't seen that yet. It's not like back in the old days when there was actually a malicious user, accidentally malicious user in the Perl community.
So I
Who
googled this. So I googled this,
Okay.
Randall, and I came to the itsallwidgets.com forum, and someone asks,
Yes.
"Have you ever seen packages that contain malware?" And you know what the top
Okay.
answer is?
What?
Randall Schwartz saying, "In all the
Oh.
years of running CPAN, I don't recall any deliberate acts of malware, but
There was one.
There was
a one. There was the one, the phone home one. Some one of the CPAN authors realized that we weren't collecting statistics. We are now, but we weren't collecting statistics for downloads. And so I presume it's a he, put in so that when you install his module from the CPAN, it would phone home. But the way it would phone home was really bad. It would phone home, pick up a text of Perl, a chunk of Perl, and eval it
not good."
as root on your machine, because of course to install stuff on the CPAN, you typically have to install as root.
Yeah,
So
really not good.
he didn't understand how wrong that was. Like how idiot wrong. He goes, but how do I make sure? I want to make sure they've got the latest release too. And I go, no. You don't automate all this stuff. This is fine. We run our own CPAD installation, so we can tell if things are up to date or not. That's our job, not your job.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's the only one ever in my history of recognizing stuff within CPAN that got what we call the ban hammer. He actually got all of his stuff taken off for 48 hours until he could upload new versions of it that didn't phone home like that. So yeah, that was exciting times. And like I said, there's nothing. And just like it says in that post, and it's all widgets. I haven't seen that yet with that. I just may be out of the loop, but I think I'm on a couple of insider mailing lists that if something like that had actually happened, it would have gotten reported quickly amongst the insiders. So I can't imagine it's actually had happened yet.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm not trying to give any good ideas to anybody, right?
No, well, so this cat is out of the bag, right? Particularly on
Yeah.
places like NPM. There's a lot of malware that gets uploaded there. Like hundreds of malicious packages a month will get uploaded, found, and then gotten rid of. It's really becoming a problem on some of these. I wonder if you have any thoughts. Like, what's the long-term solution? Like, how has pub.dev avoided it? Is it just because nobody's thought to, or do they have some secret sauce that keeps malware out?
I think there's a two-pronged approach. One is, like I said earlier, you get source to everything. So you can always review it yourself, and you would have gotten called out for it pretty quickly if you did something bad. The other is that you can avoid downloading anything that's not from a verified uploader. So there's a process you can go through to say, I really am Stonehenge. And so when I upload things as me from my Stonehenge account, that's really me. And so I've been verified as an uploader. So if I ever publish something to the pub, I'm already set up. It's so weird. I publish so many little things like in videos and we used to be newsletter articles, right? That I never had like only more than like 2 or 3 things in the actual CPAN. One of which I updated recently, which we can talk about in a second. But I don't really have like this urgency to publish a package. It's not really like in my forte for today.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I was going to ask you about this, and I thought about it at the beginning of the show, and it didn't come up. But you're the Flutter and Dart guy now. You kind of got your start as the Perl guy. Do you do any Perl work anymore? How long has it been since you've done Perl?
Well, except for the story I'm about to say, it's been years. But just recently, I had a package called File Finder that I had uploaded to the CPAN 20 years ago. I think it was the last update. It was 20 years ago. That's how old I am and how old Perl is and how old the CPAN is.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have access to a Windows machine. And so there was a bug in that the testing framework failed always under Windows because Windows had a slightly different idea of symlinks or something like that. And I just threw my hands up and said, somebody with access to Windows is going to have to figure that out. So I've been doing a lot of AI assisted coding recently. I want to distinguish that from vibe coding because I think it's important to understand how I use the words differently.
Right, right.
To me, vibe coding is one shot prompt, boom, you get an app that works. That's what everybody is aiming for, like ideally.
That's what everybody wants.
Now, this works. This works mostly because people aren't doing anything that innovative. They're doing the same shopping cart design or the same sort of branding site or whatever. And so, of course, the AIs, Gemini included, have seen those over and over again so that when they get asked this one prompt, they can go, oh, yeah, just like these other thousands of guys.
Copy
Also,
paste.
you might have a lot of flexibility about what you're willing to accept as well. Because if you're only giving it a short prompt, compliance is just merely anything that resembles that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not software engineering. That is accidentally getting what you want some of the time. And particularly if they're doing that kind of vibe coding and they don't understand the technology that they're attempting to generate, they have no way of knowing if there are the right tests, if there are the right modules, if there's the right use of modern packages or anything like that. There's no way to test that in their mind because they're trusting that this AI, given this prompt, will produce the best possible result, which is hardly ever true. It's usually just the average result for that. So what I've been doing instead, and I've been slowly shifting to this, and I know we were on I was on the show a while back about just vibe coding in general, but I've been lately using Gemini CLI as a command in the terminal window of VS Code. Now, this particular combination gives you the similar things to what, say, if you've heard of Cursor or those other guys, in that you basically have agentic actions. You can say one thing and it updates 20 files for you, that kind of thing. But it's entirely free at this point. I don't know when they're going to start charging for it, but man, it's sure nice that it's free. With generous things, you can do like 1,000 requests a day for free.
Oh, yeah.
And so that combination of things has enabled me to implement good software engineering practices using AI not as just a one-shot prompt, but as an assistance. So what I'll do for this is that I'll end up creating a PRD, a product requirement document. And I can go back, I'll use Gemini to create that initially. So I'll give it a short prompt, and it'll come back with a nice sort of PRD. But then I get to go in, and again, without even invoking the editor, I see it on the screen, but I go, okay, no. And I keep typing commands like, no, we should use these technologies instead of those technologies. And it's great because then it goes and edits the PRD. So we're getting a more and more up-to-date thing, but it's always written well, and I never had to edit a single line of the code. So I'm still not editing a single line of the code. But what happens is then I lock down the PRD. I then ask Gemini to build a series of testable steps that implement that PRD. And this is like we call sprints or whatever, or epics. And it's basically doing what proper software engineering does, but it's using the AI as an assist, not as a replacement. And so I'm still driving the process. I still created the PRD. I've committed it to the repo. Now I've got a testable plan. I commit that to the repo. I also make sure there's a checklist at the beginning. And as I finish each step, we make sure that the checks get checked off. So I have this quick visual view of what we've accomplished so far.
You know what this sounds like to me, Randall?
What? What?
It's very much like what would happen when a senior developer is walking a junior developer through doing the work.
Exactly. This is why I keep saying what I'm seeing AI do now, it's a great junior intern.
Yeah.
But that's the highest level it is. You wouldn't let a junior intern design your next product.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have senior people that are working through all the issues, that understand good software engineering. I mean, even like adding the additional step of do only one step at a time, make sure all the tests pass, and then once we commit that,
Exactly.
review all the later steps and see if something you now know, using the word in quotes there, something you now know invalidates any of your assumptions you made to begin with, or invalidates something in the PRD.
Right.
So, in other words, review at each step and commit each step like that. And once you start doing that, the AI is incredibly cooperative. It does exactly what I want the junior intern to do. And the chance of hallucination is very, very low. I've gotten in a couple of edit loops every once in a while, but I can usually figure out a way to break that by giving it a different assumption about something or whatever. But it's great at coming up with tests. It's great at coming up with running the tests and figure out why the tests are wrong. Sometimes the way it figures out that how the test is wrong, I go, whoa, I would have never seen that. So
Yeah.
I am amazed by a lot of its. Again, you have to anthropomorphize this stuff. All the insights it gets, right? And I know it's just fancy autocompletion. I do. I know it's fancy autocompletion, really, ultimately. But it's acting with this emergent behavior and giving it the full context. Like I'll stay within one context for a whole series of steps because that gives it all of how we got here. Oh, and because of that, it's also great at writing commit messages that say why the commit happened. Because it was already processing why I was asking it to change from this to that and do this from this here to there. So it had this why in the context. So I always now have Gemini write my commit messages for me because it has that why history. And remember, the important thing about comments is not how, because we can always reverse engineer how. It's why. We've got to know why things happened. And that's not implicit in the code. So it's really, really cool that I found that out. And I've been doing this with projects. I've been updating projects. And I even did that for this 20-year-old piece of Perl code. I said, I'm getting errors here. I think it's something to do with the Windows code. And it knew enough about Perl on Windows that it said, oh, yeah, this is wrong and that's wrong. Do you want me to fix those? I said, sure. So I just did it blindly, right?
Right.
And so I still don't have access to a Windows machine. So I just did it blindly. And I then submitted to the CPAN. And then I had Gemini write up the announcement about it. So even the announcement says, after 20 years, I've gone back and finally released version 1.0 of File Finder. And it actually did a really good job of writing up the announcement as well. And it sounds really first person and everything, but no, that wasn't me that wrote that at all.
Funny.
I didn't write a single word of that, except the word at the bottom. It says written by Gemini. Then I submitted it to the CPAN, and the CPAN has automated testers on all sorts of architectures. And it went green for the first time in 20 years because it finally worked.
I've said this several times in various contexts, but I think that is probably the biggest key to making all of this work is to have a good testing, good test suite in place already. I'm curious what you think about this. Is there any danger with letting the AI, the LLM, write the test suite that also is the thing that evaluates it?
Well, here's the key again. I know Dart. I know Flutter. So I have it generate the code and the tests and make sure all the tests pass. Then I personally read the tests to make sure I understand what it had that new code do. And that is the gating system on that. So I don't have to read the code. I just have to read the tests and make sure that the tests cover everything that was in the area. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think there's an argument to be made that you should be using a different LLM engine to write the tests than actually write the code?
I don't think you need to complicate it that much. I've been getting such great work out of. So I'm typically using Gemini 2.5 Pro because that's the one you get for free in Gemini CLI. So also I've been using Gemini CLI as just a smart shell. Like I've got a bunch of wave files. I need to convert them to MP3, and I can't remember that command from FFmpeg. I just go into that directory, invoke Gemini CLI, and say, convert these WAV files into MP3s. And it says, can I run this command? And I go, yeah, that looks right. Go. It just does it. So I'm not Googling questions anymore and then taking those and putting those in because Gemini CLI is built-in Googling. So it has
Right.
Google grounding already. So I don't have to worry about any of that. So I'm now using it as a smart shell whenever I need to do something at the shell command level.
Yeah, interesting. Have you ever had it give you any really dumb suggestions? Has it tried to delete files before?
Well, I mean, the way it's set up is when you first invoke it, each time you first invoke it, all the tools are disabled,
Okay.
except things that just read files. So reading files tend to be okay, but running LS, for example, not allowed. It's got like a read file individually, so it can read some of that stuff. But anything that's got more complicated, or like I have a Git and a GitHub MCPs installed, but it won't even use those without asking me, is it okay if I use the Git tool or the the GitHub tool? And I go, yeah. And then after that, within that run, it's allowed to do those things. So, like, I had forked, amazingly enough, I'd forked the project that was for the show that was supposed to happen today, and I pulled it down. And I was first just getting a code review. Then I went, oh, here's this one thing that's really wrong in it. Okay, I should fix that and send him a pull request. And I realized that I hadn't actually done this with a pull and then downloaded that clone to my laptop. And so I asked Gemini, I said, how do I sort this out? I need to be able to push back to my own repo, I guess. And it said, well, yeah, I can make that repo for you if you don't mind, if you want to fork it. I said, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to figure out the command or where to go, even go on the website. I just did it. And I said, and can you point this on top of that so that when I create the pull request? And it also said, do you want me to create the pull request for you? And I went, well, that makes it even simpler. So we did that, and then I got into a state where I went, oh, it turns out he's got a dev branch. Oh no, and I did all my work on his main branch. So I said, can you rebase? How well will this rebase on top of his dev branch, so I can give him a pull request on his dev? And it gave me, it looks like most of it will fit. There's a few things that are changed, a couple of file locations are different, but it should be okay. So I said, okay, go ahead. And then I spent another hour going through that, and the rebasing did not work very well at all. But I said, well, go ahead and make a pull request anyway, and at least fix about 3/4 of the things that were out of sync. So I was able to give pull requests for when I finished my work yesterday. So yeah, so it's great because, again, I can come into a project. My favorite new phrase is review the code of this project, tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't know how I came up with that one day, but it always seems to have the right amount of things that are good, things that are bad, and things that really ought to be fixed right now.
Huh.
And it's a perfect prompt. I'm bringing it. Y'all can use it free of charge, but it's been my favorite prompt all the time now. Whenever I'm reviewing a code base, it's also the way when I'm coming back after a session break that I say right now, even if I'm only halfway through my steps, I'll say, "Give me a current review, good, bad, and ugly," because it forces it to look at all the files and bring all those files into the context. Right. That's another thing is that Gemini CLI has a million context or a million token window. So I did like a ton of work yesterday, and I only got through about 25% of that million tokens. And I made like 3 hours worth of changes on a project,
Yeah.
and it didn't have a problem.
It's super fascinating to me the way that prompt engineering has sort of developed. Like this idea of you've got to kind of know. I don't know that we can say we really understand how these LLMs work on the inside, but you kind of have to get a feeling for that and to be
Yeah.
able to write a good prompt. I think some of it is experimentation. Some people do. It's kind of like you said, kind of get lucky with a good prompt that'll work. Probably fair to say that what works on one LLM will not necessarily work as well on another.
Yeah. And one way to get better at that is to take sort of a sketchy prompt and go over to AI Studio, or I even ask sometimes Gemini CLI to do this, and you give it that prompt and say, make a better prompt from this that really gives better accuracy.
Oh, interesting.
And then I get a new prompt that's a lot longer, and it's got more keywords specified in it. So I go, oh, that's going to be better for context. Lovely. And then that goes in as my prompt. So if I don't know how to prompt, I ask how to prompt. And I'm getting good at prompting. I'm getting good at meta prompting. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Did you catch any of the stories that like places like the Linux kernel are starting to really use AI in some of these same things? So the one that I saw was where they go to decide which patches get backported to previous versions. They're going, hey, I don't know which AI they're using, but they're using an AI and saying, hey, point out which patches should be backported. And I really love. I really loved like the header that they put on these because it's apparently it's an agentic AI and they let it write its own emails. But at the very top it says LLM generated explanations may be completely bogus, and then everything below that.
Nice, nice.
I kind of think that's one of the keys to all of this. It's like you need to make it clear, right? You need to be upfront and transparent that hey, the robot has worked on this, and where we really run into problems is where like particularly like people trying to report security vulnerabilities that are just completely LLM hallucinated. If you don't disclose that up front, people waste a lot of time. Like the guys at Curl, they're the ones that Daniel Stenberg, he's complaining about this. They end up wasting a lot of time because LLMs can make really good looking vulnerability disclosures, but you actually dive into the code and a lot of times they're just completely bogus.
Right. Yeah. It's we're definitely in a different age. That's definitely programming will never be the same again. You know, said the same thing when I started doing functional programming. I said the same thing when I started doing structured programming. You know, it's gonna continue to evolve. You know, eventually it's just gonna be reading my mind and generating code, and
I hope not.
That'll just be the scariest time. Right?
That sounds terrifying. Yeah, let's not do that. Maybe let's not do that.
So one thing you didn't bring up is the problem now where you just recognize that the way to use AI is to have a senior developer and treat the AI as a junior developer. So how do we get more senior developers?
I had that thought. Yes, that is a good question.
Yes. How do we get more senior developers if we don't hire any more junior developers, if instead we just invest in AI? And that is a difficult question. That is an interesting question. It might be that we can get junior developers away from beginner developers by using AI training. Because I've been doing some great stuff with, that's not DeepSeek, not Deep Research. There's a tutorial mode now in Gemini website where you can give it a topic. Like I gave it the topic of signals, which is a new package I'm trying to play with in Dart and Flutter. And I said, teach me about this. And it can start and just give you more and more knowledge. And then at any given time, you can say, quiz me on the stuff we just did the last half an hour. And it will generate a multiple choice 10 question quiz. And it'll even analyze the results to know what else we need to talk about. And I think that kind of AI-assisted tutoring will bring beginners up to junior. But again, you don't go from junior to senior without being involved in day-by-day software engineering best practices.
Right.
And I know you can probably teach yourself some of that theoretically, but you've got to see it in the field.
You've got to make the
You've got to
mistakes
have been
yourself.
burned by it.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to have been burned by it. Right. And so, yeah.
I had a moment just the other day where I had tried to fix something. It's in C++ code. And so there's different versions of a library. And so it's like, oh, well, we needed to figure out which version of this library we're using when we compile this because they have different features. Oh, well, it's fine, easy. Use an ifdef, grab the value, and hey, look, it compiles, it works. And then people started complaining that, hey, this feature isn't actually working the way it's supposed to. I found it, actually. This feature isn't working the way that it's supposed to. And I went in there and I discovered that the tag that I was doing to, ifdef this thing, in all caps, it's not a define, it's an enum. And you can't pull... It doesn't work that way. Enums do not work for ifdefs. It's like...
I get it, yeah.
I had to go fix that. So it's like I will remember that one for a while because I felt real dumb there for a minute making that mistake. It's like how do you get your junior devs to feel that if they're just vibe coding? Like I think that is an open question. It's interesting.
Yep.
Do we make the LLMs make mistakes on purpose to burn the junior dev? I don't know. I don't know which way that goes.
Oh, man. That would be weird. Make a system prompt that says, please sometimes make mistakes to make sure we keep us on our toes. Wow. That would be a weird system prompt. I'd like to see that.
Yes, it would. It'd be real interesting. So there's some other stuff going on in the world of open source, and a couple of these you tagged. One of the ones that really surprised me the other day was DocumentDB joining the Linux Foundation. That's Microsoft's database thing. Is this something that you have any firsthand knowledge of? Or was it just a headline?
I was just Googling for headlines to try to come up with to talk for today's show. So I just thought it looked like a fun topic, but kinds of things that we could.
It is. Something I kind of realized the other day in looking at this one in particular is the Linux Foundation. One of the things that it sort of does is it kind of works like a fiscal host, right? So like a project doesn't have to have their own organization. They just kind of tag on to the Linux Foundation as their organization, so they don't have to do tax filings, let's say, that sort of thing. And so when I read something like this, this is kind of a cynical take, but it almost feels to me like when Microsoft spins something out and puts it in under the Linux Foundation, they're kind of shedding that, right? It's like, well, we're going to move this out from underneath our organization, and you guys can take it over there with the Linux Foundation. It's an interesting, a different take on it that I discovered the other day. I don't know if that's entirely fair, but
I was trying to follow the links on that story to see if there was anything more significant to it than that, but not seeing too much more. It's showing me a YouTube video, which I obviously can't go and see right now, so it's too bad. I can't watch a YouTube video. I'm being a YouTube video.
Yeah, can you ask Gemini to watch the YouTube video for you and give you the bullet points?
I'll just tell it to tell me more about that. Yes, you're right.
Is that something Gemini can do? Can it actually pull like data from a video?
So it they implemented YouTube link up for almost all videos. So you take the URL for YouTube, you just drop it in as one of the items in your query. And then you ask questions about it, and it will typically go off the script. So in other words, it's going to read the transcript that they're putting on almost every video now. But you can tell it to watch the video, and it will do that and come back in 30 seconds or so. And at that point, your context gets swollen up quite a bit because, depending on the length of the video, it takes it a bit. But then you can ask it visual questions about the video. You can say, is there ever a time that there are two people on the screen? And it knows. Yeah. It just knows.
Cool.
It's knowing in quotes, of course, right?
Yeah.
None of this is no. None of this is no in the sense of like human knowledge, but it appears as if it knows and answers appropriately. Yes.
I mean, as far as we care, all we really care about is that it gets the right answer or it doesn't, right? Like there's a certain level of who cares whether it actually knows or not.
It's like I tell people, how do I know that I'm not a bot? You know, in that sense, how do I know I'm not an LLM just auto-completing? Like, I don't know the last word in this sentence that I'm about to say.
Right.
I'm just auto-completing until it looks like I'm at the end of something. And
Yeah.
I'm done. It's weird. Yeah. So I don't know that this is that the current technology is that far off from how we actually work.
Yeah.
So it's getting closer and closer, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
There's obviously checks and balances that are in our brains a little bit. I think it's because we still have pleasure and pain attached to some memories
Yeah.
that I don't know how we're going to put that into a trained autocompleter, but somehow there has to be some association like that.
Yeah. That is something I've thought about quite a bit. Is that the LLM does not have it doesn't have fear, right? Like that's well. So you think about you give somebody a job. Let's go back to sort of that junior developer again, right? You tell your junior developer, hey, this is the thing we're working on. You need to get this right. Well, that junior dev is going to understand some context about the thing that he's working on. Like, what if that's a really important thing that he's working on? And so he will then have that feeling of, I need to get this right. My job may be on the line, or maybe even people's lives are on the line. And so there's a little bit of fear that helps us get our work done the way that it's supposed to. And I've thought about
Yeah,
this, like an AI is not capable of that. It doesn't really have a way to differentiate between like how important these different tasks are. And there,
yeah,
it can't say this is important and therefore I better get it right. And I kind of suspect that that's going to hold AI back for a while. But maybe not. Maybe I'm
it
hallucinating.
it might be. Yeah, maybe you're an AI. It might be that there was a big jump when we went from just neural nets to transformers.
Hmm.
And then it was another big leap when we got chain of thought. And another big leap when we got chain of thought and multiple agents working together. And then now the recent wave in the last 6 months or so, agentic
Hmm.
performance, where it's actually acting on things other than just giving you an autocompletion. Like
Right.
I haven't used autocompletion in a year. I don't care for that. I don't care ever that was very useful for me. I am doing the tons and tons of, like I said, AI assisted coding
Hmm.
by typing a prompt in, letting it make a bunch of edits, and I look at those edits and see if they're fine. If not, it's good. Hey, I extended the Google on this Linux Foundation thing.
Hmm.
The key goals are create an open standard for NoSQL. That's interesting.
Yep.
Leverage the power of Postgres. By building on Postgres, DocumentDB inherits reliability, performance, and extensive ecosystems. It also ensures the project remains based on a strong, established open source foundation. That's interesting. Ensure MongoDB compatibility and support for modern workloads. So those are the four key points from the joining.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Just ask Jim. Yeah.
just ask Gemini. Um,
Yep.
so what's your thought on again? We talked about this junior senior developer. Is the AI ever
hmm
going to get to the point of being the senior developer?
I don't know how it would.
Hmm.
Um, I think at some point. Well, I guess if you dumped a ton of successful software engineering projects as examples into the mix,
Hmm.
I bet they haven't had a lot of that yet. No, they have to have had some because it does understand I want a PRD and I want steps that can be checked off, and here's how to do testing.
Hmm.
It does understand all this stuff already,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't know to ask for it. I think that's the key. There's still this spark that has to come from a human somewhere,
Hmm.
and it needs to be properly shaped and at the right angle and pointing at the right things to actually start the fire, right?
Yeah, so I've read a couple of different people that have talked about this. One was a security researcher that
Mm-hmm.
he was a security researcher that was trying to use AI to find vulnerabilities, but he was actually a good enough security researcher that at the end of the experiment he said this failed. It didn't work. Right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
it kind of in this realm. That's the difference between somebody that's a hack and somebody that actually knows what they're doing. The guy that knows what he's
Right.
doing at the end of it is willing to say, that didn't work.
Right.
So, but his take was very similar to that. Like, the AI didn't have any curiosity. Like, it didn't look at a weird result and say, "This smells weird. I'm going to keep digging here." And so his comment was like, for something to really be effective, it would have to have that. And so far, that's a human element. The other one that I found really interesting was actually Torvalds. Linus Torvalds, he was asked about this. And his comment was that what would be the most useful for him, and he goes, I don't know if any company's ever going to make this because it's so niche, but I would like to have an AI that had taste. And so he means something specific by that. He means like what good code patterns look like. And it's like, could you make an AI that could look at, a loop that looped through a linked list? This is one of Torvalds' famous examples, right? That has like a special case for the beginning of the list and the end of the list. And it's like, well, no, if you write your loop correctly, you don't have to have any special cases. It will all just work. And that's a sort of good taste that he's talking about. And it's like, could you ever get to the point to where an LLM really got that down?
I think the problem is to really get that done properly, we would need more meta tagging of what the LLMs are consuming. Because the problem is, so you've got a chunk of code, and you've got a similar chunk of code, you've got a similar chunk of code, and you're basically absorbing all those as you're doing your training. How does it know that this one over here is better than that one without some sort of meta information, human comments, or maybe a lot bigger analysis of, bug reports against it once it was released, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think it's that it needs the meta information somehow. And I think it's because when we're trained as junior developers, we recognize the senior developer as having a special position in how well they're writing into my brain. That instead of talking to my peers about this, if I talk to a senior developer and they say that, there's a sense of trust there. And that's also then meta information about how important this new fact is.
Yeah.
To overweigh the peer facts that are coming in. And I don't think LLMs have quite that capacity yet. I don't think they're seeing that quite yet. I know there's things like, they're doing training on training data, and if you use one of the absolutely free LLMs, you're basically providing training data for them to go back and evaluate with humans, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I should also disclaim, if you use Gemini CLI completely free and not with a paid key, yes, then your data is being used for training. So just a warning there. But a paid key, I think the paid key that I've used in the 2 months that I've been vibe coding heavily only cost me about $20.
Yeah.
So, pretty cheap.
Yeah, that's pretty important to call out that you need to be aware that you are it's the old adage, right? If the thing is free, then you are the product. Yeah, in this case that's literally true. The thing is free because you are helping to train the LLM. Which in a lot of cases is fine as long as people understand that. Like I wouldn't necessarily care that the LLM gets to see the raw videos of this show if I were to use it to help put stuff together. Like, that's fine. But I would not want it to look at business documents that are not released to the public. I would not want it to look at, you could take a step further beyond that. Like, if you have confidential or classified information from the government, you should really, really not let it look at that. Because who knows where that's going to accidentally pop back out.
Yeah, clearly.
So one last thing on this, and then we will break. And we are getting close to, we are just over an hour on the recording. Have you watched the lawsuit? There's the big lawsuit between the book publishers, and the AI company. Oh, I forget which one it is.
Oh yeah, you're right. I know what you're talking about. OpenAI, I think.
I don't think it's the Anthropic. It's actually Anthropic. Okay. Yeah. This is the one that I've been kind of watching, and it's happening very, in the last couple of weeks. I've
seen some discussion on it, but I'm not up to it at all. Right. I could probably ask Gemini. No.
Totally unbiased opinion from Gemini, right?
Y'all can go check it out yourself. Yes, right.
No, this is interesting to look at though, because it's asking, I think, a really fundamental question on a legal level about AIs, and I guess an ethical level too. It's something we have to sort of figure out. It's like, is ingesting all of these things transformative enough that there is no longer a copyright associated with them? Like when you use something on the internet as training data, it turns it into tokens, and then it eventually turns it back into data on the other end. Is that transformative enough that it's completely new work, or should it be considered? Should all of that output be considered derivative works?
Well, we have the similar problem with art, with all of the image creators. Is that how do you consume millions of pieces of artwork, and their prompts that would go with them, the metadata, meta tagging. How do you consume all that without at some point being so influenced by it that it's essentially a copyright violation?
Yeah.
And it's going to be tricky because all artists initially steal from all other artists. That's just the way it works. You learn your art by duplicating somebody else's art. Is what I'm told anyway. I'm not an artist, so I don't know how this actually works, but you start by trying to mimic other people, then you develop your own style, and then you swing way out there, and then you become a relatively unknown person again. But so it sounds like the cycle anyway from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's about how it goes, I think.
So if you want to get really bizarre, we're not buying your work anymore. It's it. You're done.
Yep.
But it's true. It's like the software, the text, and especially now when we're looking at, my goodness, have you seen the VO3 videos coming out now? And before that, there was like Midjourney videos and things like that, and they're so detailed and rich, but it's a totally fictional world. But it's not really, because it had to have been stealing from the right kinds of other videos that were very close in the cosine error level, or whatever the matchup criterion is.
Yeah.
It had to be close enough in that so that it could figure out physics, like when the water droplets hit the puddle, it's doing the right thing because it's seen zillions of images of water droplets hitting the puddle. Really weird stuff.
It doesn't understand the physics of it. It just knows that water droplets tend to go towards the bottom of the frame.
Right.
That's the sort of optimizations AI make. Yeah, it's interesting. So you mentioned the art thing, and that's really interesting because you see every once in a while, even without any AI involved, there will be these lawsuits about this song stole this other song's melody.
Yeah.
And you get that all the time. One of the most fun things about that, we interviewed him here on Floss Weekly. I think you may have been on this. There's a group, there's a legal team that basically said, okay, look, for up to 5 or 6 or 7 notes in a row, there are only so many possible permutations. We're just going to write all of them down, and that way they can't be copyrighted. And various musicians have used this as a legal defense. You remember that show?
Wow.
You remember that episode?
I may have seen it. I'm sorry. I don't see every show that you do anymore. But
this has been quite a while ago. You may have actually been on it, Randall. I don't remember.
This doesn't sound entirely familiar, but then again, I forgot what I ate for lunch yesterday already, so I have no idea. It might have been that way. Speaking of AI art, by the way, this is the AI version of my Crater Lake picture.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's the same picture I had before, but I ran it through Imagen 4 and said transform it into the style of a oil painting. And so it looks amazingly good and accurate and like the original picture. People almost don't notice if I don't point it out, but yeah, that's an oil painting now.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which Floss Weekly episode that was. And
if only there was some giant indexing system
I'm
would crawl through all your files.
Yeah, it looks like it was Damian Rail and Noah Rubin. But of course, Gemini is not yet telling me which Floss Weekly episode it was.
Well,
I will try. Ah, there you go. A Chill Pirate Lawyer, 2023, number 744. I do remember that.
I think I was on that one.
Ah, that was Doc and Catherine. That's right.
Ah, okay. No wonder.
Yep.
Cool.
But yes, if you're interested in that, 744, go check it out. All right. Hey, thank you, man, for being here. It's been fun. It's been fun to chat and to catch up. We do have something really cool next week. It is Frank Vasquez and Chris Simmons about embedded Linux. So we'll ask them some Android questions as well as a whole bunch of other stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
They'll probably know.
They'll have opinions at least.
Unlike me. Yes. Right.
Anything you want to plug before we let you go, Randall?
Just a couple of things. I have a Dart and Flutter YouTube channel, so please check that out. Just say Randall Schwartz, Dart and Flutter, and you'll find it there.
Jim and I will point you to the right place.
Right, and I'm also my primary source of short-term income has always now been these one-on-one office hours. So if you look at my tweets and my feeds and stuff like that, you can figure out how to do that. And I've just started introducing the idea of being an AI coach for people. So how can you best use AI in your workflow? I can help you do that. So if you need information about that, I'm available for consulting for that.
So what position would that put you in then? You're no longer the senior developer.
I'm the meta developer.
The meta developer? Yeah. Okay, that works.
Architect would be closer. I think. Well, though I'm not actually architecting the code. I'm architecting the control, the workflow. So, a workflow architect. There we go. There's enough buzzwords in one sentence.
I like it.
That'll fit on a business card.
There you go.
Yes.
Print that business
card.
Ship it.
Yes. Ship it.
All right. Awesome. Appreciate it. If you want to find more of my stuff, of course, there is Hackaday. That's where the security column goes live every Friday morning. And then there's also the Untitled Linux Show over at twit.tv/ULS. And we have a whole lot of fun there talking about some similar things, but with much more of a Linux twist on all of it. So check that out, too.
You didn't ask me my favorite scripting language.
I could.
Okay.
I could.
No, it's okay. I think I've said that answer in zillions of shows already, but it's changed now because it's no longer Perl. It's now Dart. And Dart command line. Yeah. Or technically, Gemini CLI is my favorite scripting language because there's no scripting involved.
That's actually that's an interest. I don't know that you've given that answer before.
Yeah, that'd be new. Well, next time you have me back on,
I'm totally grabbing that clip to put into the show though. That Gemini CLI is your favorite. With text editor. so what Gemini CLI is as the scripting language, and then VS Code is the text editor.
Yes, that would be it.
That's where you spend all day these days.
Uh-huh.
Appreciate everybody that's here, those that watch us live and on the download, and we will be back next week on Floss Weekly.